Start.
What do you prefer?
Hello and welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. In Conversation With is a management series by CASI New York, where we invite senior professionals from across the world, across industries, in search of executable advice. So my name is Paresh and I'm a member of the board of directors at CASI New York. We are the world's largest platform for sustainability with presence across 52 countries. We also manage a very large volunteering platform with reach of over 3 million volunteers. So while we are dedicated to sustainability and CSR, we understand that leadership is the key to success, whether you work at a corporate or whether you are working on sustainability issues. And hence this particular session on leadership. So our guest of honor for the day is Dakshita Das, Additional Member Finance, Ministry of Railways. She is also a board member at Bank of India, and she was the former MD for National Housing Bank. We also have a chief guest, Amoy Van Loo. Amoy is the former CEO for the stock exchange at Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome to the show, Amoy and Dakshita ji. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So before we go on to one of the presentations for the day, I have a question. Now, when both of you are CEOs, both of you are at a board level, and both of you have been there, done that. You are mentors. When a person is growing, I was a product executive, and then a product manager, and then a sales manager, then the national head, general manager, and then the CEO. And now I'm in the board of so many companies. When a person is growing, at what stage in the career does leadership qualities really start affecting his or her career? Give me a short answer. Anybody can pick up the question, please.
I'm happy to answer that, Amoy. I think it matters from day one. You want to be, you have to get impacted by leadership in order to be a good employee. And in the private sector, that really matters. Otherwise, you are in a mess and you are very happy to leave the organization. So therefore, leadership skills are something you come into contact with from day one, and you say, as I grow, I'm going to be like this person, or I'm not going to be like that person. But effectively and operationally, look, I am from a different background. From day one, we need to administer. But yes, I can say in mid-career, that's when I kind of really bloomed with my skills. I mean, self-admitted or self-confessed.
Thank you, Dakshita ji. Again, I have one more question because that was a very interesting answer. So the question is, we read a lot of books on leadership. We read a lot of articles on leadership. And a lot of self-professed, self-claimed leadership gurus are roaming around. Yeah. So I talk to a lot of people, and there is one thing which I always find missing. And I want your opinion, either Dakshita ji or Amoy on this. Mostly, none of the leadership gurus teach or talk about listening skills.
Yeah, I'll take it, Dakshita, or I can start and you can add. Well, that's a sore point for me as well, in the sense that to become or to be a good leader, you have to be able to listen. And not only listen, you have to be able to listen far and wide. So you have to listen to your ground staff as well as your executive staff, your managers, and your board. So listening is a very important thing, and listening to hear, not listening to respond. Because some people listen to respond and they can't wait for the person to finish that particular sentence and they're ready to respond. So they have to listen and listen intently. And it's a skill that has to be honed. It's not something, because people listen and they want to respond quickly, they have to listen to hear what the person is saying so that they could respond appropriately.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, please. Dakshita ji.
No, I agree with her totally. I think she's put it beautifully. You got to listen to everybody. But one addition, as you grow older, you got to learn to listen to yourself, not be reactive, just listen to yourself.
Correct.
So a more mature decision comes out of you.
Correct. Absolutely. Because when I train a couple of boards and board members, so usually I tell them don't wait for your turn to talk. Just listen. Yeah. And
Yes.
get it with. So because I find that even board members, very senior people, senior to me, even, and when I'm training them or when we are in a discussion, usually people are only listening to you because they are waiting to respond. Yeah, and that doesn't qualify as listening. That only
No.
qualifies as waiting. Yeah. So yeah. So while people have developed waiting skills, they have not developed listening skills. So
Absolutely.
I'll tell you why I asked you this, because a lot of people look up to both of you. A lot of people look up to Hayden, as leadership, as senior people, as management mentors. People look at your profiles on LinkedIn and social media, and they want to emulate you. Particularly Dakshita ji and Amoy, because a lot of women today are out there trying to work, trying to make a mark. We are very particular about that, and we invite a lot of women for our shows, so that but nobody is teaching this basic thing, so then it becomes chaotic. When somebody is a great sales guy or a great finance guy, and then that person suddenly becomes the manager or the vice president, then the listening skills are zero, and only productivity skills are there, which then
Mhm.
creates an organizational issue. That was my point. Nevertheless, thank you very much, both of you, for the great answers. Let's start with Amoy's presentation. Amoy, can we have a presentation on the screen, please?
Sure, I will. I'll be sharing now. Um, just let me know if everyone is seeing. Okay, great. All right. So without further ado, I will just dive into the presentation. So thanks very much, Parish, for your kind introduction. And good morning, good day to my fellow panelists, Ms. Dakshita Das, guests, and everyone, Hayden, and everyone else present here who has taken the time to be part of the distinguished CASI New York Knowledge Series. It's really a pleasure to be here today to share some of my thoughts and exchange some ideas on the topic of leadership. The current environment has really amplified or reinforced the need for some essential leadership traits and shifts. As I see it, for leaders to be successful now and beyond the pandemic requires a recalibrated or evolved leadership playbook, which leaders can work from. So in the next few minutes, I will outline some of those leadership imperatives and leadership mindset shifts, which I believe are pretty much essential. The pandemic has thrown us all, and more sharply, thrown leaders into what I describe as a transforming tailspin, which appears to have no clear end in sight. Leading through such uncertainty has tested even the best of the best leaders. Interestingly, the pandemic has acted like a filter for the leadership imperatives that matter the most, and implicitly shone a spotlight on some leadership mindset shifts required by leaders now and beyond. It's important to note two things, however. One, while some of the leadership imperatives are not new, the degree of importance which they now attract is way beyond what existed pre-pandemic. And two, the changes may have been born out of necessity, but it is really becoming clearer that they have great potential beyond this crisis. So let me start with the four leadership imperatives, which I believe has been reinforced and has produced tremendous value for companies over the last 18 months and counting. Imperative one, agility. This unique situation leaders find themselves in calls for leadership agility on steroids. Leaders more than ever are being called on to make smart, tough, and effective decisions with limited time and in a briskly changing landscape. Leaders must be able to anticipate the best ways to move forward, identifying the best ways to inspire, connect, and communicate with their teams in either a virtual or hybrid space, executing initiatives with minimal strategies, with minimal delays and cost overruns, and embracing lessons learned and applying them for greater effectiveness. Now, that's a tall order. But the facts are, in this moment, a leader's agility, and I would like to add, his or her capacity to build this throughout the ranks of the organization will culminate in an inflection point in the organization and can make the difference in whether a company survives, thrives, or dies. Leaders who cultivate agility throughout the company stand to benefit from what I call the agility multiplier effect, which is essentially amplifies a company's agility proficiency. Take, for example, the owner of Dimo's Pizzeria in Chicago. Due to the lockdowns, they could not sell sufficient pizzas. This signaled a possible closing down of the business because they had less revenues coming in. Thankfully, this did not happen. As they quickly reinvented themselves, they pivoted their business using their existing ovens and the same staff, properly trained, of course, to make a much needed product, that is face shields for frontline personnel. So their business is now performing at the same levels pre-pandemic, and now they have 2 lines of business from which they can grow. So that's really pivoting and being agile is very, very important. Imperative 2, resilience. Resilience, the test of a leader's resilience could not have been clearer during the pandemic. Resilience has moved very, very swiftly from being an asset on your resume to an absolute requirement for leaders in today's workspace. A demonstrable capacity to be resilient is almost compulsory, as leaders are being called on to manage complex and crisis situations with greater strength, dexterity, foresight, and self-control in order to make decisive decisions and then repeat this in quick time. Harvard Business School professor Nancy Cohen says that resilience is the capacity to not only endure great challenges, but get stronger in the midst of them. Resilient leaders continue to attract significant respect and appreciation for skillfully navigating their way out of the despair and are stronger and better prepared for tomorrow's challenges. Imperative 3, innovation. In order to steadily drive business growth, leaders need to champion an innovative culture, allowing their people to be more responsive to clients' wants and needs and also being faster to market. Leaders must build their readiness capabilities so they can more easily adapt to to meet the challenges of the VUCA world that we now live in. The following are some of the essential ingredients leaders can adopt towards fostering an innovative culture. 1, create a supportive culture and safe space to experiment, fail, and learn. 2, cultivate a positive or well-functioning error culture. This will allow persons to take the lessons learned and use it to improve for the next time. Build a reliable feedback culture. And 4, develop a sandbox so that people can play around with those ideas when created, tweak it, and release. Imperative 4, empathy. Leading with empathy is no longer a nice thing to do. It's a must-do. It's more critical today than it ever was before. In the midst of this crisis, leaders are really expected to make a more positive difference in their people's lives. And Brené Brown really says it so well. Permit me. Empathy, as she says, has no script. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting and communicating that incredibly healing message of you're not alone. Leaders do not have the latitude of only exercising empathy when it's convenient. Instead, they need to understand how people are being affected and struggling and take the requisite action to support them. Kindness, compassion, and empathy are here to stay. Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, is really a great example of demonstrating empathy during this crisis. A striking detail that stands out to me is that she listens to what people have to say in both words and actions, and she demonstrates how she cares about them. My fellow leaders, I will really argue that empathy is one of the most important leadership imperatives needed. You see, your people want to know that you care, that you understand them, and that you're there for them. Empathy can be an asset that differentiates leaders in the months and years to come. Therefore, it's critical you build this capability and harness it wisely. I now want to move to the leadership mindset shifts. I am sure that we can all agree that the changes witnessed in just about every industry is anything but normal or routine. Therefore, as leaders, we have to reconcile very quickly that some essential mindset shifts must be made so that we can better navigate the minefield of challenges and opportunities the pandemic has implanted in both our social and economic landscape. So allow me to share the 4 leadership mindset shifts that I strongly believe have been amplified. Shift 1, execute with priority, purpose, and alignment. Leaders must enforce targeted execution. Avoid greenlighting every project. Project selection must bear the trademark of being a top priority, purposeful, and strategically aligned. To stay focused, leaders must prioritize a handful of key projects, 3, but no more than 5, which he or she will champion and delegate the others, freeing up time to invest in simply thinking, reimagining, and long-term planning. Ensure to assign measurements of success. This will act as a compass as you move through the various project stages. Relentlessly communicate with just about every stakeholder. Do not allow ambiguity to set in, and connect the dots for your people by cascading each goal into key actions, projects, or initiatives. Creating this alignment reinforces how the pieces connect to the big picture. Shift 2, invest in your people. Leaders must have a deliberate strategy to invest in their people. Recent events have shown with vivid clarity that leaders, no matter how good they are, cannot succeed without the support of his or her people. And therefore, it is critical that they skill up the next level and potential leaders to 1, become more equipped to better manage and problem solve multiple complex problems, deploy decisive crisis management when required, and 2, to become better coaches. Leaders must be intentional coaches, helping people to become their best selves in spite of and deliver their best. This is a win-win for everyone. In this new normal, leaders need to be intentional about every decision they make about their people and for their people. Shift 3, communicate and connect. Communication needs to be clear, consistent, and adaptive. Lack of or poor communication creates or produces anxiety and fuels a healthy grapevine. When employees are not sure why something is happening, guess what's going to happen? They will make up their own reasons, and often their whys are worse than reality. You want to nip this in the bud. Therefore, you want to ensure that you keep all stakeholders in the loop, especially your board, your team, and your clients. This is consistent with the belief that lasting shareholder value creation stems from nurturing better relationships with all stakeholders. Be proactive, authentic, and transparent. Being proactive means that you should aim to address the concerns and questions well before they are asked. Be authentic. Bring the real you. Your people want to hear what you think, believe, and feel. Provide accurate descriptions of reality. Be as clear as possible with what you know, what you anticipate, and also what you do not know. Listen to your full team. Your best idea may not come from the boardroom or the executive table. There is much to learn from your ground staff, so lean in and listen to them. 4, ensure that you create a mechanism to receive unfiltered information and feedback that is objective and dependable. You need to know very bluntly what your clients and other stakeholders are saying about you and your company. This will help you to better understand, recalibrate, strategize, and lead. And 5, be honest. Tell the truth up and down the chain of command. If team members believe the leader to be dishonest, they will not trust nor buy in to the leader's words, strategies, or vision, and the leader will become ineffective and ultimately fail. Leaders need to use this as the opportunity to connect and preserve trust with stakeholders. Shift 4, inspire and provide clear direction. The level of upheaval and consequential change that people have endured and will continue to endure for some time will require something deeper and more personal than a mission and vision to move and motivate employees to act. it really calls for leaders to inspire their people. Leaders must be able to lean in with their authentic self and connect with their people. The moment leaders understand and get this assignment right, they will be able to drive better performance in spite of the effects of the pandemic has brought on. So allow me to do a quick wrap up. Leaders are now expected to promote inclusive workplaces and reduce inequalities, safeguard the health and well-being of employees, and decrease the organization's impact on the environment. Thus, for leaders to sustain high performance moving forward will require them to balance these progressively varied performance metrics. So I say, if there was ever a time that leadership mindset shift was required, it is now. It calls for leaders to consistently seek out ways to live better, to work better, smarter, safer, and more importantly, serve better. This very dynamic flattening of hierarchical layers, adaptive and agile way of thinking is the mindset that will distinguish the future-ready leaders from those who are not. So I will just leave a summary of the recalibrated leadership playbook here for just a moment. These are my thoughts on leadership now and beyond. Thank you so much, Parish. Allow me to turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amoy, for that presentation. I was making notes. So I will use a few of those slides in my future presentations. So it was important for me to make notes, but that was a good presentation. Let me ask you a question. So as a CEO, you have an agenda, and usually not everybody has the same agenda. So there is one down who's looking at a promotion. There is two down who's looking at a bonus. There are four down, four levels down, who are looking at adopting new technology or changing the technology because it is the in thing to do and it makes their curriculum vitae stronger. So that not everybody has the same agenda, and that is one of the biggest critical issues we face as CEOs. So when I was the managing director of a bank, this is something that I was very much aware of, and I was trained on this by my mentor. That have always take everything, listen to everything, but think about it, because not all agendas are leading to the same goal. So what would your advice be to CEOs? How do you manage, when you're one down, two down, three down has multiple agendas? How do you make sure that everybody follows or works on the same agenda? How do you do that on a daily, weekly kind of basis?
Right, that's an absolutely great question. So one, well, it's like a number of things, but probably I'll just cite three. Keeping people focused on the strategy and the priorities that will support those strategies. So whilst you might have your own agendas, keeping people focused on the strategy and the priorities to achieve and accomplish those strategies is what I do. And secondly, to help reinforce that is I would have weekly, monthly, quarterly, and then obviously annual meetings talking about how is the execution of those strategies going, what's happening, what's your roadblock, what's keeping you back, how can I help you, and then an assessment quarterly versus annually on, is this strategy still making sense for us? Because in this pandemic and in this VUCA world, we can't review strategies annually anymore. I don't think so anymore. I think that has gone out the window. I think a review of strategies a little more frequently is important, and that helps people to stay on track with what are we doing, why are we doing what you're doing. And then the third thing I'd say is communicating to team members, communicating to them in and out of meeting agendas, making sure that I am connected or CEOs are connected with their people. That's very, very critical. So those are some of the things that I do to keep people focused, so they don't stray and their agendas don't supersede the organization's agenda.
Thank you for that, Emma. That made a lot of sense. I have a few follow-up questions, but let's
Sure.
hear it from Dakshita ji. Can we have a presentation, Dakshita ji, please?
You are on mute, ma'am.
So I'm picking up two things. I'm picking up leadership and I'm picking up your pet theme, that is sustainability. And taking off from what Amoy has spoken today, I hope to generate a quasi new way of thinking, which is called sustainability in leadership. And that's a picture which indicates what sustainability is, the hope and the future. Now, a lot of people in this, the 5 of us, 6 of us must already know about Chanakya, but Chanakya's Arthashastra, which is very big in terms of administrative skills and in terms of guidance to potential administrators, rulers, both, says, though it was written strictly for rulers, it says that before you start some work, always ask yourself 3 questions. Why am I doing it? What the results might be? And will I be successful? Only when you think deeply and find satisfactory answers to these questions, go ahead. And which is where we bring in the theme of trying to communicate with oneself, apart from communicating to the wide range of people who might be working with you, as to what you are doing and why you are doing so. And therefore, we come to this issue of a sustainable leadership. What exactly is a sustainable leadership? Inevitably, it is all about ensuring that you set up any organization or you work in an organization with a very long-term goal of ensuring that that the objectives of the organization and the bottom lines of the organization are both met with. But today, sustainability is very important. It is meeting the needs of the organization without compromising with the ability of the future generations. And that is what is a very new angle which has come into leadership on today's date. MOI, I feel, covered the broad contours of what leadership should be. But for me now, this is the new angle which has to come. And to realize why this is important is because we have to realize that human beings, as one of the various species which walk this planet, it's hundreds of thousands of years to 1 billion, and in just about 200 years or so, a 7-fold to the 7 billion mark. Today, human beings stand at about 7.6 billion. And when a human being comes in, and when there is a population increase, you have a demand on resources, you have increased diversity in the workspace, because you have a lopsided growth in population. All countries are not growing in the same manner. So your workforce is coming in a disintegrated manner. Often it is not locally based. It affects economic development, employment, income distribution. It results in a lot of efforts to ensure universal access. We need to have R&D to focus on that. And we need to plan for the numbers which will follow. So you must be wondering where leadership comes into this. Actually, it is an awareness that this is something which has to be built into our entire thinking. And for that, we must understand that we are the latest entrance into the universe. Our Hindu scriptures in India, they say that we are 8.4 million species. Humans have only detected 7 million of these. Our growth has been such and so spiraling that we have driven almost 1 million species to extinction. Today, I was reading about the semiconductors, and somebody has written that the problem in Taiwan is that there's not adequate water. Actually, what we are doing is that in indiscriminately using resources, in having a very silo-based approach, what we are doing is that we are driving species to existence. Total forest area is 31%. We kill, slaughter 77 billion animals annually. We don't know what is the cause of COVID, but perhaps there will be a human and an animal angle to it. We cut 15 billion trees annually, and 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide is being pumped into the atmosphere. Therefore, please understand, as a leader, this is how you should be. Serene, calm, integrated with your environment. And what you are doing is this. You are spreading toxic thoughts, you are spreading toxicity, you are pumping in a mono approach. This is, by the way, taken from the jungle of Sariska, just on the outskirts of Delhi, where we found that as humans, we are so bad and that we are indiscriminate in our assault, rape, loot of what we are. And once we do that, what we don't realize is that we are unleashing a potential damage to the world that we leave for the future generations, let alone ourselves. Therefore, why be sustainable? Why have sustainability as something built into your company? You can end up earning more. As a pre-discussion, we had a short informal discussion where Professor Sheth pointed out that sustainability 15 years ago was nowhere in the scene. Today it's big. Today everybody's talking about it. And if you think that by being sustainable or having sustainability as an issue in your overall approach, you're going to actually compromise the balance sheet of your company, that's not so. You can earn more money. In fact, you'll actually be maybe reducing business costs. The indiscriminate, wanton type of production practices will be reformed. You might have better people. You might, as a leader, be able to invoke the holistic approach in your employees. And by having new value system, you might actually have a better company at hand. And to be a sustainable leader, and that's without being preachy, you need to be a visionary with a dream. You need to be direct, inspirational. You should be very honest. And perhaps honesty, I mean, Chanak Kautilya also says something about the most honest tree, the tree which stands out getting cut first, but honest with yourself. And you be collaborative and participative. And that's so important. Treat your team as one. My son, my very young son, 22-year-old, joined his company. He was fresh out of college. He's in the IT. And his manager taught me the first lesson on how not to be a leader. And he reached out to my son and he said, "What? You don't know how to program for this company. This company's goals are ABC." The boy said, "Yesterday I was in college and today I'm here. What do I know?" He says, "You should know everything." He said, "Can you guide me?" He says, And that was it. And then I told my son, I said, if he is like that, you needn't be like that. And that's why I say, though you are, as a sustainable leader, you are not only doing, these days, soft skilling in companies is very important. You have breakouts, you go and play games, you do holidays together. But more importantly is what you do in the workplace as a leader. Are you empathetic? Do you have a dream? Does your team understand you have a dream? Are you direct? Are you inspirational? And most of all, do you have courage? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dakshita ji, about that sustainability and leadership. I'm actually wondering what to ask you, because sustainability as a topic is so close to my heart. I work like 18 hours a day on sustainability. I've been doing it for so many years now. And when I started CASI 12 years back, I had to explain to people what is CSR and sustainability. Yeah. So what you said is absolutely right. But now it is the center of the board agendas. So speaking of board, let me ask you a question. Now, this question is very personal, so this is what I want to do, but I would like to leverage on your experience and ask you this. I want every board to have a separate discussion on sustainability. So I want to table a proposal to every board, that they should meet 1 hour and discuss on sustainability, and not only sustainability in a specific sense related to their products, in the overall engagement of sustainability. So in the entire supply chain, right from procurement to warehousing to sales to after sales kind of a thing, right? What would make a board member interested in listening to something like this?
I'll take that head on, because I believe that today it's also a fashion statement. So it's not very difficult for any board to pick it up. The question is, Do you feel it in your heart? And actually, we are more aware now. COVID, particularly these 2 years, has taught us that we can eat less. It has taught us that we can do with a lot more exercise. And it has taught us the beauty and the joy of just going outdoor and looking at the moon or the sun. What I mean is that if it has become an organic growth and it has become an organic change in you, I'm sure the boards will have no problem in picking it up as a topic. I personally have found that each time I've told my office that let's go and collect all the rubbish on the street, they're very happy doing that, as opposed to my telling them go and fill all the ledgers with, the debit and credit. That's very boring. But doing things like which are organically a part of you, where there is a community, where there is an instinct to be a part of the community. I mean, you'll have views, you'll have contrary views, because all boards comprise of multiple people who are all educated and informed adults. So you might have a contrarian view and a tug of war about how. But I think selling the concept of sustainability is not such a, such a vague thought. It's
Given the circumstances that we faced in the last 1,000 days, it is not.
It's not. I mean, it's just all come home. And we have got to be very aware that we are playing with nature. Whether as corporates, I mean, you see Shell, you'll find that's also business. That's also business, fossil fuels and the way it's going. But everybody's got to have. CSR till now was basically all about educating kids and having some healthcare products. Now the range is much more. It's much more. And it's organic. Yeah, it might be commercial, but it's organic. And I talk about India when I speak, Amoy. Maybe other countries' experiences are different.
No, absolutely. You are absolutely correct. In fact, I was training around 77 large manufacturing companies last weekend on sustainability. And the biggest point that I had to discuss with them was scope 3. So you are responsible for your own emissions, you are responsible for your vendors' emissions, and you are responsible for all the procurement that you do throughout the year and the emissions done on that. So that increases your responsibility as a board member by 97%. So that is what I want every board to discuss whenever they get the time. But that is my agenda, to make boards discuss this point in their board meeting, with or without me. But I want them to discuss this. So that is a personal agenda which I am working on vigorously. So that is why I asked this. Okay, let me ask you a question to you and Amoy both. It's a common question, but I want answers from both of you. When you join a company as a CEO, when you join a company as somebody in charge, there is already a board. What would your speech to this board contain? What are the top 3 things that you need from your board, basically? The top 3 support items that you need from your board members in order to be a successful CEO. So what are the 3 things that you want your board to do for you?
Amoy?
You are on mute, ma'am. Amoy.
Right. Yeah. So I will start. So I guess this is very practical for me in terms of, because when I joined the stock exchange, to help me, I asked the board what were their top 3 priorities. What was troubling them? What was keeping them up at night? So I wanted to hear what would their top 3 priorities, because then if that's the board's top 3 priorities, obviously, then I need to focus on those things, in addition to what else might be happening. But if the board had 3 top priorities, guidance and support is important. We must be on the same playing field. We must be on the same level in terms of thought. We will not always be, but certainly we must have at least some sort of common thought in terms of how we want to see the organization grow and progress and improve. So I would need the board's support in terms of having a clear direction from them in terms of business continuity. And then one of the other things is how do we manage the risks in the organization? Because that's managing the risk in the organization and coming to terms with what are the risks in the organization and what can impact the business going forward was one of the things that that I think is also important as for a CEO and a board to have, because we can have different opinions on what are the risks an organization faces. And if there's a divergent view there, then the organization as CEO, it would be difficult for any CEO to be working towards one thing when the board believes that risks will be something else. So those are the three things that I will cite. Turn it over to Darshita.
Okay. Now, any CEO is only as good as their board is. So number one thing is that the board needs to have faith in the CEO. So therefore, there is a little bit of a tango with both of them have to do with each other. So I expect that my board should have faith in me. I have been in such a situation. I was lucky that the gentlemen who were with me, they all had faith. I was just lucky. Next, board should have knowledge. It's an utter waste of time that you have long board meetings in which you are actually starting kindergarten classes, which means that they need to read their board notes and they need to be prepped and eased into the company. I feel sometimes as a CEO, it's very important that you make the members, expose them to various verticals of your company without any interference, without permitting interference in the functional aspect. And the third, which is a human thing, and I don't think it's possible, is that ideally, as a board member, they should be trained to leave their egos at home when they come for board meetings. That can really mess up things. But the first two are very important: faith, knowledge. And knowledge means reading the board notes and not sitting there and then, kind of saying, which page, which page? What does this mean? I mean, we are not running coaching classes in board meetings. That's it for me. My three things.
Yeah, I want to endorse the first two, the first two of having faith. The third one is a real one, Darshita. I'll say it's a very real one. It's not one that, you don't need to put on that number 3 list. It's a very real one about leaving egos at home. But the first two in having faith in your CEO, to allow the CEO to lead, because when you allow the CEO to lead, I mean, one of the reasons that you hired a CEO is because of the experience and qualifications and expertise that the person is bringing to the table, and therefore, having that faith in the person is very critical for the success of the organization.
So true. So true.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, both of you, for those answers, because both of you looked at the board from different directions when you started with the answers, and that was very exciting for me. I have had my own share of issues with my board members throughout my career, so I can completely relate. One, managing risk, I can relate. Many times, even in finance industry, board members have no idea of managing risks, and that really gives me sleepless nights. So because then I have to take one-sided decisions. I cannot rely. I don't have a sounding board, So I cannot use them as a sounding board because they have no idea what to do. And knowledge is absolutely right, Dakshita ji. That is a pain point like crazy.
Yes.
So you meet boards, they have no knowledge, they come there, have tea, sandwiches, and go away.
That's
and after the board meet, you feel like a fool saying, okay, great, now what? now what? It's like that. So you have to do this, informal meets with specific board members again at their houses.
That's
and
true.
Get their approvals for some specific agendas that you have.
Really, really painful.
So, I can see both of you nodding heads. So I'm sure you have been in similar situations like this.
It's good to know that it's a worldwide common phenomenon.
Yes, it is. So with that, we come to the end of the show.
I see Hayden's hand is up.
Yes.
Hayden, are you there?
Yes, I am. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. Please tell us.
Yeah, more a contribution than a question.
Yeah, please.
I just wanted to share in terms of my own sort of leadership journey. And I have to say that I was fortunate, for better or for worse, in terms of how I ended up being qualitatively as a leader. I've been fortunate to kind of progressively lead over the years, progressively lead larger and more diverse teams. I mean, that has really helped me. So you kind of start small, and you over the years kind of build your expertise in terms of leading teams, larger, more diverse in terms of their responsibilities and imperatives. And also, just as importantly, lead teams across jurisdictions. So you lead teams in different sort of cultural settings and country settings and so on. And that has kind of, I think, solidified my capabilities as a leader. I would say, and Amoy kind of spent a lot of time on this, the sort of leadership imperatives and the discussion, the come to Jesus discussion with the directors really is a function of the status of the company and the status of the environment. I mean, the priorities would be really a function. I've led companies that have had challenges, that have been in difficulty. So the focus there is kind of leading them out of difficulty. And your leadership approach in those circumstances is different, markedly different from a company in a stable situation, more directed and so on. So the status of the company and the threats that the company faces is important. But fundamentally, I could identify 5 or 6 learnings from my experiences in leadership and competencies that I've had to develop. One is self-awareness. As I kind of perform my important leadership function in the team, my own awareness of my impact and my strengths and weaknesses and my impact on the team, because you're always under the limelight as a leader, and you have to be aware of that. Second is humility in all my dealings, up, down, and across. Third is honesty. You really have to be comfortable with and be prepared to expose your own vulnerabilities as a leader, because people respond to that. They acknowledge that, they respond to that. That really kind of creates your authenticity as a leader, the extent to which you're willing to be exposed and honest. The fourth we spoke a lot about is empathy, of course. And then as I go into an organization, I acknowledge that part of my responsibility is to hasten my obsolescence. I have to create leadership leaders under me. An important part of my role is mentoring leaders to take over from me as I inevitably become obsolete in this setting. So that has been really and that's a process that starts from day one as you enter the organization. So really, as a leader, I kind of see myself as an orchestra leader, an orchestra leader of an orchestra, directing the band, creating an environment where all can contribute and feel comfortable with contributing, and be the best, very comfortable to make mistakes and learn from mistakes and be the best that they can be. So that in sort of encapsulates my own sort of journey and my own learnings as a leader through a variety of organizations in my work life. So I just wanted to contribute that. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Hayden. In fact, I was waiting to ask a question to you. So you have been a CEO of a regulator. You have immense experience as a leader. Tell me, how does a leader select a mentor?
So true.
Well, I mean, I would respond to that by saying very carefully, but being very very open-minded about it. I mean, I've not only been the CEO of a regulator, but I've been the CEO of a bank that has had the imperative there was to turn around the fortunes of the bank because the bank was in trouble, and so very different sort of challenge and responsibilities there. So you my preference has always been, and for organizationally, is that if an organization can create succession and leadership from within its ranks, it's much, much better and much more effective than having to search outside for it. So you kind of develop and it's a very organized and structured thing where you create an environment where the people you lead have the opportunity to demonstrate their leadership potential systematically and continuously over a period of time, and the quality rises to the top. And the ideal scenario is one where you don't have one candidate, but you have several candidates vying for the position, competing in inverted commas, and you have so you sort of create a cadre of leaders that can all have the potential to sort of take over from you when you leave. And you kind of create a path for people to develop and take leadership decisions and learn and so on. So that's perhaps the best way I can answer the question you've asked.
Yeah, because my problem is when you become a leader, it is nearly impossible to select a mentor. A lot of people want to give you advice. You have no idea whose advice to use. You are a fresh young leader, and you are raw and immature, a little immature, so that you cannot really ask people saying, okay, I'm lost here, can you help me here? So yeah, when you are a young leader, it happens to you. And at that point in time, it becomes very difficult to get the right mentor, saying, okay, this is where I'm lost. Could you help me? What do I do with this? And it is not always about knowledge. Knowledge we can always ask a consultant, but it is about people. It is about understanding whose advice to follow. Where are we really headed? Should I go for a joint venture? Should I go for a partner? Should I go for a foreign partner? So these are decisions which you have to take as a leader. And at these times, in my personal life, I have had a few very good mentors, but sometimes I was lost. I had no idea who to ask, because I always felt these are interested parties, so they will take me that way, and this is the interested party here, so he will suggest this way. So I had no idea what is the right way. So what would your advice be?
So you're right, Parish. It is lonely at the top. The buck stops with you, and at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. You are, I mean, and the buck stops with you means that ultimately you are responsible for the mistakes made by the people, by members of your team, and you have to accept that. I mean, you deal with them appropriately, but you are responsible. But you have to, and that's part of the job. I mean, that's what you're being paid for, to ultimately make a decision, taking as many of the factors into consideration as you can. Acknowledge that you will never have complete information on many, to support many of the decisions you make. So it's really a decision you make on the balance of probabilities, on the balance of information available to you. That's the job of the leader. It's lonely at the top, and certainly in my experience, and I'm sure Amoy can kind of connect with me here. Sometimes as a leader, in many instances, you pay the price for making a decision that may not that was a risky one. And you pay the price for that, and that's part of the challenge of being a leader. You'll never get everything right, and you have to be prepared to pay the price also.
Fair enough.
If I can add to what Hayden is saying in relation to your question about how do you select a mentor, that's the question. How do you select a mentor? I say you treat selecting a mentor like selecting an employee, which is that you have an interview process. You have to know, because remember, you want the best mentor, right? As a leader, you want the best mentor, and therefore you need to treat this like an interview process. What's your criteria for the mentor that you want to select? And one of the things that's important in that criteria is really having a trusting relationship between you and this person. Because if you don't trust this person, you're going to be having a very dysfunctional sort of a mentor-mentee relationship. And you will be constantly second guessing or questioning what this person is saying. So having a trusting relationship is important, treating it like an interview session. And ensuring one of the criteria as well is having alignment of goals. If the person is thinking way off base, yes, that might be okay for a sort of innovative kind of approach, but you must have fundamental and foundational alignment of goals so that when you're discussing ideas and initiatives, there's a common sort of thread and thought in terms of how you see things moving forward, whether it's a business initiative or something like that. So I'd just like to add that.
Dakshita ji, what would your opinion be on this? You have a very different career stream, member of finance, banking industry, which functions very differently. So what would your opinion be on this?
One is on a lighter note, I'd rather be a mentor than be a leader. It's easier being a mentor, it's purely an advisory capacity. But to be a good leader, if I recollect my days of leadership where I actively was heading a regulatory entity, which was also a lending or a refinance entity, it's correct you're only at the top, and it's correct that you need somebody to be able to reach out to. And I'm only going to repeat what Amoy and Hayden have said. You need somebody you can trust, and you need somebody to be on the same page. I was there at a particularly critical time in the financial sector where I had to navigate several sharp decisions. And I was reaching out to various people. One day this fellow, one day this person, one day that person, taking appointments, standing in front of their residence, waiting for that 5 minutes, which would give me a clue as how to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
By hindsight, if we had a better institutionalized mechanism of a mentor-mentee relationship in India, I think there's a great space for that. Maybe we do it on an interview basis, we do it on a faith basis. In the traditional family-owned businesses, the father, the patriarch, the matriarch, whoever it was the mentor. You had a problem, you could walk into the room, and say, help me. Now, on today's date, in a fast-changing environment, I think there is a huge space, and again, I speak of India, where, yes, this type of a space is there, and it should be cultivated, because I've suffered a lot. I think I got all types of lifestyle diseases those 2 years. That I led an organization which was in the thick of a crisis. And yes, Hayden is right when he says you end up taking decisions for which you are 100% accountable. You don't know whether they are right or wrong, and all knowledge is not with you. For that matter, you don't know within your own organization who's the rotten apple. But what you need is somebody who can help you navigate. Just that person you can have a cup of tea with or a cup of coffee and say, hey, this is the problem. And you get a quite calming guidance. Yes, there is a lot to be said for this space. It needs to be developed here. But these are very generic views.
Thank you very much for that. It is good to know that we have all been in different boats, but on the same storm. Yeah, so the storm was the same, the boats were different. All of us have faced the same issues, similar issues across geographies and across businesses. So thank you very much for that. With that, we come to the end of today's session. It has been a very interesting session. And again, it has been a very interesting session from a personal point of view, because I really enjoyed listening to some of your thoughts. It was a great learning experience for me, and I'm sure it will be a learning experience for all our viewers. Thank you very much, Dakshita ji. Thank you, Amoy. Thank you, Hayden. Thank you, Krishna Kumar. Mitesh ji, this was an excellent choice of speakers. So congratulations to you on organizing this. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here.